Excellent. Okay.
All right, we are recording. We are live. And glad that everybody's here. So we are in our second week of An Emotional God. And today we are going to be learning something very new and exciting to unveil. I bet you never thought that this could be this exciting about emotions, but I'm telling you, this is something, first of all, it's something that Susan and I have created. And I know that I've been working on for several years. And so it's exciting to kind of share outside of a counseling realm and share with other people to get some of y'all's perspectives and insight as well. But before we get into that, we want to get straight into stuff. We want to do a little bit of a review. Hang on a second. I'm ready now. So what to expect? Well, it's not 7 more weeks. It's 6 more weeks because I didn't have time. I just copied and pasted this, so I didn't have to make that. But again, what we're trying to do here is gain a new understanding that we can apply to our lives. We do that by how to be emotional in a godly way. So this is about our own emotions, but also understanding and connecting to God and His. So we have to come to understand how to use this emotion with God and with others. We can do that by getting emotional with God, and we can do that by becoming emotional with others. And so this is the point of today, is trying to understand a lot of these feelings and how they work. And then as we continue to delve into this study, we're going to really get into trying to talk about our own emotions. And that's going to be important.
So the rules, yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
The rules of the class, we're going to go over those again, apparently. And number 1 is interrupt and ask questions. I'm good with a little bit of background noise. So if you don't want to keep yours on mute, I'm okay with that, and speaking up and just kind of talking. So definitely interrupt. We like that. It doesn't take us off track or anything. We love the input, and definitely ask questions or give comments or thoughts, or add what your heart has you wanting to. Also add to the discussion in any way. The more you put into it, the more everybody gets out of it, I think. And sometimes we'll say something that we've always used, and you might go, I think it sounds like this to me, and that might work for someone else. Practice sharing emotions at home and at work, which is, I guess, the same place. So
right now it is.
In the grocery store, because it can get kind of tense in the grocery store right now. So use some good emotions. I'm sorry, we have a child. Hold on. Yes? Yep, he doesn't want to come say hi. So practice sharing those emotions at home and work. That kind of, it might sound silly, but for me it helped because I would notice it in places I never did before, and then I'd kind of understand more about myself. And I became a lot less frustrated and angry sometimes because I got the feelings before the anger and frustration. So practicing always helps. So those are our rules. So we're gonna do a little bitty recap of what we went over last week, just kind of the important parts, which is God is emotional. Thank goodness, because this would not make sense to have a class about it if He wasn't.
No.
So God's emotions, they do exist and they are righteous. And with God's emotions, they connect us to Him and to others. And also His emotions role model what He expects of us. So it's very much a godly thing to be emotional, and it comes from God, and He created emotion, and He created us in His own image. So we are supposed to be emotional. So we need to learn how to be emotional in the way that He wants us to be. So why not equip us with the right words and the right descriptions and the right examples? So that's what we're going to do today, is learn about a tool that helps us be more godly, we think.
Yes. So the first part is trying to understand feelings. Feelings are not the same as I feel hungry, right? Or I feel like that person's not listening to me. Those aren't feelings. But we have to get into emotions. But in order to move forward on emotions, we have to spend some time talking about these feelings that are going on for us. We begin, if we are able to understand our emotions, or at least how they work, because that's very difficult for a lot of people. Even me, I'm really good at talking through this but I am terrible at applying it too. I'm just as human. Just because I have knowledge about it doesn't mean I'm great at actually using all of these tools. I have to keep practicing.
Yes.
Yes. So
I think it's kind of just, I always give an example of this. Preachers know how to pray, right? And I haven't asked yet, but I've always wondered if you're a preacher or if you're like the head of the church, that's one of your tools. That sounds maybe kind of bad, but it's not. You have to know how to pray. Like Brian's brother is a priest in the Episcopal church, and boy, like we've talked about, he can pray, but he just knows he has the voice, he has the right words to hit. And so I always kind of challenge him, and I'm like, so when you pray, do you think and talk to God? Like, because it can kind of become a rote type of memory thing, and that's probably dangerous for preachers, I would imagine. So I think that's their tool that they have to do to connect, and so it becomes just easier to do. He can talk about emotions and teach them and point them out with clients.
And Susan used to make fun of me for wanting to talk about emotions, and yet all she does is use them too. So it works both ways too.
It does, yeah. So it is kind of a difficult, it's like a language. I always think of it as a language, but it's a tool. So make sure you kind of learn it in the right way. All right.
When we understand this, we can bring back our own understanding of ourselves and bring it back to understanding God too. Without this understanding, we are just fools. Understanding, I already said this. Understanding feelings allows us to connect and share who we are with others. Yankee Candle, right? If you wanted to go to the mall and you want to go to Yankee Candle, nobody has memorized where Yankee Candle is in the mall, right? So we have to go find it. If you're in the mall, how do you find Yankee Candle? What's the easiest way?
Smell.
But Bath and Body Works, I mean, all those kinds of smell places, Abercrombie with people without shirts, guys without shirts. How do we find Yankee Candle?
The map.
The map,
Yes.
the directory, exactly. What's the most important part of the map?
You
Where
are
you
here.
are.
Yeah.
You are here,
here.
exactly. It's not Yankee Candle, it's not Dillard's, it's where you are. And so you can find Yankee Candle when you know where you are, and that's what feelings do. They connect us to other people. Without it, you're just walking around the mall going, Yankee Candle, Yankee Candle. So you need to connect by using your emotions, and that's what emotions do. They say, here I am. Without this understanding, we are just fools. We need emotion in our communication. Proverbs 18:2. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but they delight in airing their own opinion. So again, we have to work on understanding. Understanding is a good thing. When we understand these feelings, then we can bring them back to God. In Lamentations 3, verse 40, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. We have to understand ourselves and what they do. We have to put them out there, kind of like the rules that Susan covered, right? We have to start using them at work, at home. If we don't start putting them to a test to see how they work, how can we use them with God? They don't work with people, they're not going to work with God. We have to be critical of our own thoughts. Oh, you were going to cover this, maybe.
No,
Were
you're
you?
good.
You want me to keep going? Okay. This introspection takes time. We have to be critical of our own thoughts. We have to really examine our thoughts. It's easy to kind of point off. Sometimes we just jump to easy feelings, right? Oh, I'm frustrated, right? Or Kevin was helpful with me in pointing out upset is in the Bible. And in my version, NIV, it says, let not your hearts be troubled. But he read a version that says, let not your heart be upset. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if the Holy Spirit would approve of upset. So we have to be critical of our thinking, and we can't just use the same ones. We get stuck using the same feelings all of the time to talk about ourselves. I remember I would call my mom sometimes, and it's like, oh, she would just have these grunts. And I'm like, that doesn't help me understand what's going on for you. I want to know you. I want to connect to you. I want to know where you are. And that's what's important. So in Psalm 77:6, I will remember my song in the night. My heart meditated and my spirit ponders. How wonderful.
So when we have gained this understanding of emotions and more importantly ourselves, then we can use these feelings in our relationships with other people and with God to help us get more connected and closer to them. So 1 Peter 4:10-11, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. This is the next one is really good. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. So it puts a little responsibility on us, you think, to have to learn how to speak the very words of God. We can't just, praying is great, and he does sometimes just give us words. My mom always taught me, if you just don't have the words, just pray that the Holy Spirit steps in and gives them to you. I think that's beautiful. But, you can do that, but eventually God's going to go, I think you kind of need to do a little work here. And so he wants us to worship him and find the words. So we do have responsibility in there. I moved it.
I did.
Go ahead.
So today now we're going to get into some serious emotion. We are introducing a tool that is going to change the way you understand and use emotions. I think this has the potential to influence everyone in their own understandings of emotions. If you think that you are emotional, fantastic. I'm not here to debate whether you are or not. But I think that there's something to gain in understanding more about understanding our own feelings and how to communicate them, how to define them, how to put them out there for people. When we do this with other people, it's going to change the way we communicate. I've used this example with clients quite a bit. When you go to HEB, the checkout person, well, he or she may not ask you this now, but they ask you one of two questions. Did you find everything you were looking for, and how are you doing today? So if we can get better at answering that feeling question all of the time, then it's going to be fantastic. So I've checked, I put on CCB the feeling grid. It's under files. You can download that there. Susan and I have created this over last couple of years, and
Brian's created this. He comes to me and asks me what feelings might go in certain squares, which you'll see in a moment. But he's really worked on this quite a bit, and it works. Like it's fun to use. We make our kids use it. They don't like it. We have fun with the family.
I love that thing that you made. I love that thing. I downloaded it this afternoon, and it is great. It just like lays it out so well.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about it so that everybody understands. If you don't have it, I'm going to show it on the PowerPoints today, and as we talk about it. If you have questions, this is the time to intervene. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to look it over as well. I use this in therapy fairly often. Susan has made fun of me as being way too tool-based in my therapy, but I like this a lot. In fact, I used to make fun of something similar to this a long time ago. I'm like, oh, there was a feeling wheel, and I was like, oh, let's take a ride on the feeling wheel. So it was terrible, but I like this one a lot better. What I normally do with clients when we look at this is I would tell them to take a moment and notice what they observe about how it's constructed. Every way that this is put together is intentional. And I'm going to go, instead of doing that with you guys, I'm just going to tell you all of the different important things about it. And then hopefully y'all will have some questions and other ideas or insights. All right, here is the feeling grid. Ooh. There are 114 emotions. It's really an interesting thing that most of the people who come in for counseling are coming in for, feeling sad or angry or scared. And we have a lot more adjectives for those feeling words than we do for joyful, empowered, and peaceful, which is a shame because we use those a lot more. And that's a psychological phenomenon, which we can talk about another time. I'm willing, so I'll be here after. So let's start with the things to notice first. There are two halves to this grid. There is the left side, which we could, for all intents and purposes, call that the upset side if we want. Or on the right, we have the upright side. Now, most people would probably call this negative and positive. There's no such thing as negative emotion. Negative emotion means, to me, without emotion. Emotions aren't either good or bad, they just are. So we have emotions that we certainly don't want to feel on the left side, sad, angry, scared, and emotions that we'd rather feel, joyful, empowered, and peaceful. Can you cover that?
Nope.
Okay. You'll notice that there's also, because of those halves, we also have opposites. So the opposite of sad is joyful. The opposite of scared is peaceful. Very important part right here. The opposite of angry is empowered.
When this was first, he first started using it, and we started using it in marriage retreats too, I didn't like the empowered used to be power. So if you think of that for a little bit, well, angry is to try and have power.
Right.
That's the way it feels. And so I was like, can we create empowered? Because being empowered is different than having power. So it's more kind of internal, it's who you are.
Right.
So being empowered.
I always think of when our kids were like 3 or 4 and they've had enough experience of us getting upset at them. So when we do something then that upset them, and our 3-year-old wants to, no, Daddy, you're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, this kid has no power over me, but they're trying to use anger as a way to exert their power, but they don't have it. And so that's a beautiful example where anger is the opposite of empowerment.
But they're actually trying to empower themselves. What do 2 and 3-year-olds, they start to know they can speak up. So they're speaking up to find their voice. Right. They want to be empowered, but they really only know how to do it this way.
Right. Anger is not the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey,
we'll find a way.
Hey, Brian,
go ahead.
does it connect? I mean, am I following you correctly? This may not be the right word, but is in anger, a lot of times we feel, right? I often hear this and often feel this, is in anger, I feel out of control. Right? And so then you're saying that the empowered is kind of that control factor where then I'm able to feel these, and I'm choosing that within.
Or you're okay with not having control. Like if you think about a time where you feel empowered, it's not really going to bother me. Like when I feel like I'm having a good parenting day, or for those of you that are now homeschooling, well, I've had all those bad homeschooling days. I feel a little more empowered right now because we've been doing it for a long time. So there's an empowered feeling when everything's going well. Things mess up and I'm like, it'll come back around. So I don't have to have control. I just feel empowered in the moment that I'm in.
Right.
But when I don't feel empowered, I tend to react with anger.
Right.
Or out of control.
And that's colloquial speech, right? I lost my temper. I lost control. That's the opposite of feeling empowered. Right. Absolutely.
Kind of reminds me, Susan, what you were talking about last week with the Sonic drink.
Yes.
Kids, right? You felt like not empowered to protect them, and so it made you angry.
Right. And so I I hit angry, but where I really was, once I realized it wasn't anger, I was scared because I couldn't be empowered. So yeah, and that's how they all kind of connect. And we'll show you that in a little bit, to where what did I want to feel, and then the opposite is what I was probably doing. So we'll work backwards. So
we have 6 basic emotions, and those are outlined on the outside in the darker, bolder colors. We have sad, angry, scared, joyful, empowered, peaceful. These, you can call them tier 1, right? So they're the outside, and then it moves in toward tier 2, which are more emotions related to the previous, And then we move in closer to the center, tier 3, and those emotions are related to the previous as well. I have all kinds of time when people come in and say, oh, I'm frustrated. I'm like, what's that anger about? Oh, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Well, if you look in the middle of the screen here, frustrated is in tier 3, which is connected to mad, which is connected to angry. Can y'all see the mouse cursor?
Can y'all see the mouse cursor?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Change the color. No.
Frustrated is connected to mad, is connected to angry, right? I'm anxious. Oh no, I'm not scared. Well, anxious is here, worried is here, and they're all connected to scared. So these emotions, the basic tier 1 emotions, are a part of thinking about things on a basic level.
And the outside ones, the tier 1s, those are really the most difficult to nail down and know. Which one do we know? We know anger. We know when we're frustrated. We know those are the easiest words to find, to fill. So anger is just kind of, what does a baby do when they're hungry as an infant? They cry. So that's how it's easier just to kind of know what that is. It takes a while to figure out if you're scared. It might take a while to figure out if you're sad. It might take a while to figure out if joy is what you have or what you want. Or peaceful, we've actually talked about in Sunday school, takes work. Like peaceful just doesn't happen. Peaceful is something you have to move towards and work towards. And sometimes you don't even know that's what you're working towards. You're just trying to figure out how to feel less stressed, less anxious, which is on the other side of peaceful.
Right. It's important to note also with these basic emotions that these are simply labels. So they're not meant to represent the caricatures of those emotions, right? So if I say joyful, oh, you must feel joyful, it has a meaning. And that does not mean that you walk around and hug strangers, especially at this time in our lives, right? If you are angry, it doesn't mean that you're a yeller or that you're an angry person. We're all angry people. We're all sad people. We're all peaceful people. We have all of these emotions. It doesn't mean that you're punching holes in walls. It doesn't mean that you're trembling behind the couch because I say that you have fear. So these basics are important just because they help clarify what is really happening. Any thoughts or questions so far? Perfect. When you look at just one basic emotion, and we're gonna stick with scared. Actually, here, let me do this. I'm gonna fluctuate a little bit here. Scared, look, that's nice and big. So when we look at one grouping of these emotions, in the second level, we have tier 2, and in the third, we have tier 3. The tier 2, these are 6 more emotions that are related or affiliated with scared. So with scared, we have different ways of feeling scared. We can be concerned, insecure, afraid, helpless, rejected, or anxious. When we move these emotions, the tier 2 ones, are what we would consider our first person emotion. So these are what we experience internally, right? So it's a good way to describe. Not always, rejected is something that is a behavior that actually takes place, but the emotion is internal. So sometimes we can be told, no, you're too short to ride the ride, and you got rejected, but that doesn't mean you're feeling rejected inside emotionally. You could feel something else entirely. Oh, thank goodness, I didn't want to go on that ride. So rejected is the internal experience, whereas insignificant and inadequate would be the third person experience. These are what we express outwardly toward other people. This is what is happening when we are feeling useless. If you are feeling useless, then you are feeling helpless. You are feeling helpless, you are feeling scared. So when we talk about these feelings, we can work our way from the outside. We can start from our basic emotions and work our way in to help identify and narrow and specify what we're feeling, to really stamp that you are here part. But sometimes it's important also to get a basic understanding of what's happening for us. So if we feel discouraged, it's important to understand that that sense or feeling of feeling discouraged is related to feeling scared. And this works on the other side as well. Peaceful. When we are feeling peaceful, or if we're feeling peaceful and then we feel accepted, that is a peaceful feeling to feel accepted, to be let in. Sometimes that acceptance is when we just get acknowledged. When we are given acknowledgement for what we are doing, we are feeling a part of something and we are feeling accepted. And that accepted internal feeling is related to that basic feeling of peace. Everybody kind of following? Going, well, shield your eyes. I'm going back to the big one. Oops, if I can. Here we are. Gotta find my notes here. Okay. So I'm sure you've noticed the pretty colors. The colors are important. First of all, the colors help with identifying the opposites. But also, it's important to recognize that these emotions are created in a spectrum. Sometimes it's really hard to understand where one emotion begins and the next one ends. So if we start with sad, there's overlap between feeling sad and angry. What was that movie that came out with the aliens invaded the cartoon, and the alien said, "Oh, you're sad mad." Right?
Sad mad.
Sad mad is a feeling. It's different than mad. Yes, home.
Yeah.
It's different than mad and it's different than sad, but you're being mad and having sadness at the same time. So there's overlap between sadness and mad. But it works even more when we look at the spectrum of these emotions. So apathetic. Apathetic is defined as, thank you, is up at the top. Apathetic is defined as not having emotion, but to not have emotion, well, by definition, would be sad. There's overlap between feeling apathetic and hurt. Sometimes apathy leads us to feeling indifferent and numb, and we get that way because we've been hurt for an extended period of time. So there's overlap between apathy and hurt. Overlap between hurt and lonely and depressed, depressed to ashamed, ashamed to guilty. And we can keep going because there's overlap between sadness and mad, right? So guilty and avoidant. Avoidant and hostile. Hostile, mad. Mad, selfish. My favorite part is between angry and scared, right? Critical and concerned. Maybe you've experienced or had children or a spouse who, because you're struggling to understand something that they're telling you, so then you criticize the way they're trying to teach, criticize the way that it's coming across. That expression of anger is really not what's happening. And when you express that you're confused, you're expressing from a place of fear, and people generally want to comfort. So if you are going to express anger, it's not going to lead to empowerment. But if you express some fear, people will take the time to comfort that fear and explain it differently. But these emotions keep working. So as you work all the way down, anxious then has some overlap with excited. Up at the top of joyful.
Up here?
Yes.
Up at the top of blue.
So apathy all the way down to anxious then has overlap with excited. Yes.
There was the verse that actually Greg said in church, right?
Yes.
It was
Matthew 28.
Matthew 28:8. It says, when he went through and he talked about deepened wonder and then sense of urgency and a story to tell, so kind of through the sermon, he said, 28:8, Matthew, so they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy. And I was like, hey, those are two emotions. I was like, those aren't really the same emotions. And I told Brian, I said, I actually asked a client one time, I was like, can you be lonely? Can you be lonely and have joy? Like we were kind of processing where this client was. And I was like, I think. Like, I was just kind of asking as we talked about. But when I told Brian, he was like, oh, my feeling grid. I can tell you what that means. So when you think about fear and great joy, well, we understand joy, but what is another word for fear when we have fear? Scared and being anxious. But what's, and overwhelmed and worried, but what is connected to anxious up in the blue? It's similar to excited. If you think of physiologically, like you're anxious or you're just kind of excited, like when your kids are kind of younger, you have to figure out which one they are because they're kind of reacting the same way. And we feel the same way sometimes.
I've used the example, my kids are always anxious for Christmas morning. Are they scared of Christmas morning? No, they're excited for Christmas morning. But are they scared of Christmas morning? Yes, because they don't want 2 belts, tube socks, and a calendar, right? So they want more than that. They're afraid of getting terrible things. So there's overlap in this spectrum. And it doesn't work in just the second tier. It works in the third tier. Indifferent to numb, numb to let down to disappointed. Even enthusiastic to fervent, to fortunate, to appreciated, noticed, cherished, superb, pleased, assured, bright, delighted, liberated. All of these emotions have overlap between them. So generally when I'm using this myself as well, sometimes I try and say, oh, what am I feeling right now? I might try and narrow it down by staying in the basics. What am I feeling? And then if I can rule out some, then I can go to what's left. So if I'm feeling peaceful, I can rule out these other 2. It's not really joy. It's not really that I'm feeling super empowered. I'm feeling peaceful. Okay, so let's find out which one it is. Is it supported, accepted, loved, thoughtful, secure, content? So when I do that, then I can go and become more specific as well to really identify what those feelings might be.
I think the one, so just to kind of give another example, if you look over here at avoidant, which is the top of angry, did you go over, avoidant is what we feel. We are
That's
avoiding.
the internal, right?
So that second tier is I'm avoidant of what's happening. But why do we avoid? Because maybe we don't know, or we don't understand, or we're kind of scared of what is about to happen. But if we were aware, so if you go all the way over to the opposite, if we were actually aware and knowledgeable and empowered by our awareness, we don't have to avoid. So if I'm avoiding, that means I want to be aware. So you see how you can kind of take where you are and then check over on the opposite side to see if that's what you want to be. Sometimes you don't know what you want to be. And so, and I had a fun moment with a client. I didn't know if it was going to work out, but I said, what do you want? She goes, I want to be aware of what's going to happen when I go home. And I said, well, okay, so what do you think you're doing? And she goes, well, I just avoid that. And I was like, oh, look at that. That's perfect. And I go, you avoid because you just want to be aware, but because you're not aware of what's going to happen, you're going to avoid. And so she's like, oh my gosh, that. So it was just kind of simple. I think I lucked out because it worked out in that moment. But they can be the opposite. And it's not that they're opposites, it's that they guide you to what you're not, where you don't know you want to be.
This is a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot. Generally, people are struggling, right? We struggle with these. We don't like to feel these. And I think that also is what contributes to our avoidance. We like feeling these things, but also I think we do a pretty terrible job of telling people when we're having good days. Sometimes we're afraid, well, they're having a bad day and I don't want to share how good my day is in order to upset them even more. That's not how emotions work. They should be all the time. You should be what you're having, have and share what you have. Because sometimes, if you've ever noticed, when you smile at someone who looks down, or you've been down and someone smiles at you, that smile also triggers some reward for you. trying to debate if I want to. I'm going to talk about it. So, what we're going to do with the next 6 weeks is we're going to cover each of these basic emotions. We're going to cover next week angry, and we're going to cover this emotion, and we're going to talk about all of these different emotions and how they happen for us, and how God uses anger, and how we can also use anger that's appropriate, and how we should use it. The next time we'll do sad, then scared, then joyful, then peaceful, and empowered. So the feeling grid's not going to go away. We're just going to get more detailed with it and how to use it and provide these emotions for yourselves.
But it's the tool. So it's not the class, it's the tool. And the tool is going to help us. So I'm going to tell you something about, we just started rereading the whole Bible again. We're on like day 4. So we're in Genesis again. At least it's not Chronicles, but it's Genesis. But I noticed it when I was reading this morning. I was like, hey, this kind of works for Sarah. How do you do Sarah before
Her name
she
was Sarah at this point.
No, she wasn't. It was okay, maybe I don't know. It had an I. It was, how do you say it differently? Anybody? Sarai?
I've just heard it Sarai.
Sarai. Okay. That's what
A good tip is to listen if on your Bible on your
that's right.
if you'll do the auditorial.
Yes.
That's how I listen to
Yeah.
something. I didn't listen.
That's how to pronounce everything. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So we're going to use the Bible and we're going to use this tool and just kind of use it to show the different emotions and feelings. And you might come up with better words for some of these spots, and that's great. That's the purpose is to teach, to find the right words for your feelings and what the feelings are and what God is actually speaking about. But so like, for example, when she said, did you put it in there?
It's there.
It's there. Oh, I jumped ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No, you're in the right spot. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's lots of places we're having feelings all of the time. And so we're going to read this one and try and use our feeling wheel to kind of understand, feeling grid, excuse me, to understand what's maybe happening at this moment for Sarah.
So it's Genesis 21, 8 through 10. And with my glasses, it says, and the child grew, which was Isaac, and the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah, it was Sarah with an H, but Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she was being laughed at, is what I see. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. There's a lot of feelings in there. There's a lot of emotion. What did she do? She got angry. So she got mad. But why did she get mad? What was the feeling before that? Whom she had borne to Abraham, she saw, but Sarah, the son of Hagar, Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she was being laughed at. So what do you feel when you get laughed at?
Hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
You get your feelings hurt. You're sad. You get embarrassed. I don't think embarrassed. We put that on there, what used to be. So then that turned to her anger. And so she had him thrown out. There's embarrassed. So if you look at embarrassed, we usually feel pretty insecure when someone laughs at us, right?
Insecure means unsafe.
Unsafe. So scared, feelings, embarrassed. But then she reacted with anger. But what I noticed about thinking about what Sarah was feeling and coming up with what she was actually feeling underneath the anger is I got to know Sarah a little bit better. I kind of connected with her as a human.
Sure.
I connected with her in the Bible, so she became a little more real to me. just through those feelings.
And if I had to try and clarify where she was in her anger, she wasn't avoidant.
Not at all.
Hostile, let's see, was she exasperated or sarcastic? Not really. Mad, she seemed mad. Frustrated, no. Furious, yes. Selfish, that's interesting. Resentment, yeah, that stands out pretty good too. So this is where I would say, if I were just looking at Sarah, there's some selfishness that's going on for her and some resentment. And then because of that, also Hagar and Ishmael, yes, Ishmael were still rewarded by God, right? As far as she will be taken care of, and they will have another great nation as well. So this mad, I don't know that it works, but it certainly was present for her.
So that's kind of the simple example of just starting to notice it when you read and getting a better understanding of the person.
These are some other examples that, out of regular life, right? Someone cuts you off while you're driving. What's the emotion?
No one gets mad at that.
Yeah.
Nobody shows somebody the state
Well,
bird of New Jersey.
Not right now. No one's driving. So there tends to be a little road rage for some people. What?
Yeah.
I heard anger. Did you hear
Anger.
Anger, right?
anger?
What about fear? Right? I mean, you could get injured or hurt, or people in your car can get damaged. So there's some fear.
I was driving the kids to school into Austin several years ago whenever we were commuting to school that way. And this motorcycle came right down the middle of the two lanes on 71, and there's a stoplight up ahead. And he just zoomed through and kind of curved around. And I got so mad because I heard him coming and it scared me. And so then I kind of looked around and I had to think, there's a semi next to me, there's a motorcycle coming in front of me. And I'm just thinking through all of these different things, and it was dangerous. And then all of a sudden I was like, he could have harmed my kids because he was just trying to get to where he wanted to go. And so I apparently was talking out loud. And all of a sudden James leans in, he's like, you should bump him, because he was sitting right in front of me. And I'm like, I think I talk out loud a lot, but I was trying, and I had to back up and explain to him. I was like, I don't know where you got bump him from, but I'm not going to bump him. I'm just really, really angry that he put us in harm's possible way. And so it all came from fear and then frustration and then anger and talking out loud. And so I didn't bump him, but it's
Felt like
it.
And then other feelings, I feel you get that promotion that you worked hard for. That's on the other side of that. What's that feel like? Could be scary too.
Right, new responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be more pay, and that's a happy thing.
Mm-hmm.
All the chores are done. This one I put in purposely because Susan and I sometimes don't even know how to relax or have peace. So all the chores are done, we'll be like, what else do we need to do? What did we forget? Like there's no peace. Like we just on to the next thing, you know? So it's one of those things that if it's peaceful, it's quiet, it's too quiet. So learning to wrestle with peace and how to hold on to peace is a difficult thing.
But again, how do you wrestle with it if you don't recognize that it's gone, or recognize what you are doing is keeping you from obtaining it? So it's just the knowledge of there is peace possible. So maybe we should just sit and enjoy.
Right.
And because God wants us to have peace. He wants us to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to recognize that.
So we have about 9 minutes left or so. And so at this point, we wanted to really leave it open for some thoughts or questions about the feeling grid, because you get to use this the rest of the week. You get to go kind of find your feelings and know what's happening for you. Does anybody have any questions to help clarify or understand more, or comments or things that you're curious about, or how we operationalized it? Go ahead, Kevin.
Brian, I was wondering if the darker shades in the middle, everything has a darker shade. Well, maybe not everything, but there's seems to be something in the middle of each of those, and then you go outward. And I understand that you were saying there was a shades of everything in transition, but why did you put the things in the middle of each of those that you did?
So you're right, the shades are there to help with the spectrum of emotion, right? So helping show the balance of things moving from one to the next. And then on the other end of it, I just wanted to keep the same kind of spectrum going, but also to highlight its opposite. I just remembered something because it's helping me point this out. Sometimes we get fixated on all these things that are going on over here. And what's important is its opposite, because the opposite sometimes is telling us what we need. Right? If you're afraid, the opposite is love. So
And that's why you show it lighter over there. It's the lightest color is on the right in the middle, and the darkest color is on the left.
right,
Because those are the polar opposites that we should recognize in ourselves.
exactly.
Right.
That's amazing. You should have been an engineer in your part-time job. Good.
I spent too much time on this making it look pretty, and that's all I'm good for. So.
He does. He does. Yeah, just to give you a little bit of background to understand, we switched it to a grid because a woman with the last, was it Wilcox?
Yes.
Wilcox. I can't remember her first name, but
Gloria.
Wilcox in '82, she put out a research article that was about a feeling wheel, but she only had like the outside ones. And so she didn't have hardly any in the middle part, but it was her way of just beginning and saying, hey, this is a great thing to build on. We searched for her, called her, because we definitely believe in giving credit where credit is due, but we could never find her. And honestly, we changed it so much. So then we started seeing all the other feeling wheels that were completely pirated off of hers and created in all different ways, which was legal and fine. She didn't copyright do anything with it. But it was really confusing once we got all of the words into this big wheel, and we would hand them to clients or hand them to people that we would talk to and work with. And so we actually created the grid just in the last 6-10 months, because we're able to separate them out and it's not too overwhelming, and you can learn one at a time. And then it gives us, of course, it's ours, and we're not taking it from somebody, because we didn't want to take it from her without connecting. But then there were so many feeling wheels out there that it's helped so much. It helped with all of our relationships with others in our job, with our families, with like, we would notice it the more we would talk about it and work on it together. Kind of like, was it Dobson? He talked about with his wife said, as soon as I started working on the marriage retreats with my husband, our marriage grew. And she's like, we were doing okay, but just the working together and spending time together. And so with us working in these emotions and these feelings, so the wheel kind of helped you see how they were all connected. It was like a continuum in a circle. But we like this better because it's not overwhelming. And so that's why anxious kind of goes back up to the top and is connected to excited. But my favorite one is sarcastic. Our family is full of sarcasm. And I have said since Brian and I got married, and I'd point my finger at him, I'm like, every joke has a little truth behind it, so you be careful. And so our kids now do that. And so sarcasm, it's on angry side. It's not on joyful side. There's no fun one. It's sarcasm. But so every joke has a little bit of truth behind it, so you got to be careful.
Right. Any other thoughts or questions?
I just like how you put it like you said, in connected parts and small parts that you could maybe focus on one a week or one a day and see how you do in that area. And then you're more observant of it as it happens in your life instead of trying to fix everything in one,
Thanks.
Right.
week.
Yeah, 114 is overwhelming. That's a lot of feelings. But if
Yeah.
you break it down, it gets a lot easier.
Yes.
So the other day, Sarah and I were working in the kitchen and something rubbed me wrong or something, I don't know. And she says, "Why are you mad?" And I said, I don't feel like I'm mad. I feel frustrated.
Mhm.
There it
Could
is.
you explain?
That was cute.
Is frustrated a little bit nicer way? I mean, is it less mad or
I think it is, but I don't think it's still connected.
I think it's still connected. Yeah, we have all these different words to try and describe it. Like, I think frustrated is certainly a different experience than furious, but I think that they're both mad. And I'll praise Sarah here. She was getting to the inner Kelly here. That first person
Okay,
Kelly.
There was a tone. There was a tone involved.
But okay, so
I'll stick up for Kelly though. Sometimes a wife will say, "What are you mad about?" Like they know it for a 100% fact that you're mad, and you aren't. But they believe you are, and you can't convince them otherwise. So then you just pick something to be mad about.
Right, and we're gonna definitely talk about that next week. Like,
Oh,
what's
good.
wrong?
We need it. Husbands will need it.
Exasperated much? Yeah, that feels hostile because I walk away from that hostility all the time. So not all the time. Not all the time. So yeah, it's, and I think that that's the point, is just trying to get to the understanding part. Absolutely. Oh, I pushed the button. Absolutely, frustrated is a way to describe what you're going through, and it's certainly a softer way of expressing your anger, but it's still anger.
But what's neat about what you both just said was, okay, maybe you were mad, but you were trying to go, I don't think that's what I want to be. Or maybe I'm not mad and I'm really just, I think I'm frustrated. You just verbalized what was going on and gave another word, another feeling, and more information for Sarah. And if it were me, I would have been like, okay, we're moving to where you are. And so then it took it right out of, well, I'm mad too. And then you both,
And
so,
make sure it clarifies that it isn't furious, because
Yeah.
that is also mad.
yeah.
if only we would have had this posted on our refrigerator, I could have gone.
We
Right.
actually have people who tape them up there.
And then we'll get some
Yeah.
"You are here" magnets, and you can say "You are here" and put it on your magnet.
So you mentioned that you sent it out, but did you email it or?
It's
Or-
it's on CCB.
Okay.
Under
It's on today's email, just as a little link at the bottom of the "Come join the class tonight" and above the word "comment." Just click that.
Okay.
These are things I don't know about that page.
Yes.
All right.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, so my semi-homework for you all is to take a little survey at the end of your day, because you have these feelings all day long. These feelings, remember, we're talking about feelings, we're not talking about moods. We're not talking about sustained depression or sustained joy. We're talking about these emotions. And just because I might have a moment of sadness does not reflect that overall I might be feeling joyful. So the important part here is to look for all of these different emotions. When I am using empathy with clients all day long, so I'm jumping in and around with a lot of different emotions, and I'm having my own as a reaction to them, or with my kids or whatnot. So I come home and the kids have cleaned up the living room. Oh, wow, that's a good feeling. And something else happens man, I'm late for work. Oh no, I'm scared I'm going to be late. So those emotions fluctuate throughout our day. So take a little survey at the end of your day. Try and see which ones you had all day. Try and be creative. Notice those different moments. Some guy is tried to cut you off and then you ended up passing him later on. So you had two emotions, right? Or three maybe. Some anger, some fear, and then, holy gosh, you were liberated because he got stuck at the light and you didn't.
Deep.
That's deep.
Like it.
Great. Again, if y'all have any other questions in between, you can certainly contact us and let us know. Or you can get on CCB, join the group there and send us a message as well. You can send those messages direct to us or to the entire group to talk. And next week we'll be covering anger. Yay.
Brian and Susan, I did notice that Laura Mann had trouble with her Zoom.
Okay.
And so if y'all don't feel comfortable in helping with Zoom, maybe someone in the church staff could give her a call tomorrow and help her, get through whatever trouble she had.
Okay.
'Cause I sure can't help her.
We don't mind. We can try.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
And
I just
you can
noticed in
record
the
it too.
email she replied and said, I'm not going to do it tonight because I had trouble with Zoom.
Okay. Did she email you?
She emailed some group reply thing. I don't know
Oh,
if
okay.
it went to the whole CCB. It said all members, so I think it went to everybody.
Oh,
And
I got it. I have it. Okay.
Yeah, I just gave her some advice. All I knew to do was to click on. See, some people see password in a Zoom email and think they're going to have to enter something. But most times, if you just click the highlighted link, you get right in and you don't have to enter anything.
Right.
Okay.
You might have got confused on that or something.
I can call her. I'll call her tomorrow.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for letting us know.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate y'all being so responsive with the technology and text and email and everything like that, and putting out extra things during the week as y'all think of them. That's really neat. That shows how committed y'all are to the whole 8 weeks of you getting better and us getting better as a family, not just, well, I've done my class duty for today. I'll think about it next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah. No, we physically are far away, but everybody's kind of physically far away right now. But
Yeah.
doing the class it felt good last week to see faces and interact and talk.
Yes.
So we've actually really enjoyed it. And yeah, you learn more when you teach. So you're in the Bible more. It's nice. It kind of gets you in there. So, but thank you, Kevin.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Y'all have a good evening and we'll see you
Y'all
next
have
week.
a great week, everybody.
Thanks.
Enjoy this cool weather. It's
I
gonna
know,
be
we love
a little
it.
warmer next Wednesday, I bet.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Just don't-